What's a sign that someone grew up poor? Story 1. When you can't finish a meal, pulling it apart to at least eat the meat because that's the expensive part, or just force feeding yourself any meal you buy because you have to feel like you didn't waste, being hypersensitive to any light left on, door left open, opening the fridge too much, running water too long, etc., because you're trained to minimize utilities. Never pouring more than 1/2 a glass of any drink when it's someone else's house, except water, because you don't want to be seen as wasteful/gluttonous. Making weird snacks out of food that isn't supposed to be a snack, eating dry ramen noodles like chips, Kool-Aid with sugar and your finger to make your own fun dip, eating Kraft cheese slices/cold hot dogs/other things that are normally just a part of a meal. Story 2. Never replacing anything unless there's absolutely no way to use the old thing anymore, and going to absurd lengths to keep something still usable. Story 3. Never buying clothing at full price. It just feels illegal. Story 4. Odd hoarding behaviors of things you probably should have gotten rid of out of fear you won't be able to replace them easily. I keep a stack of boxes broken down because there's still this fear in the back of my mind that I'll have to move again at a moment's notice. I make a decent salary now and have lived where I am for nearly 7 years, but I still can't part with those boxes despite the space they take up. Under the bed, behind the chest of drawers. Yeah. I still have them. Story 5. Scanning the menu for the cheapest options possible when at a restaurant. It's okay, the soup is really enough for me. Story 6. Difficulty throwing things away. Story 7. For me, I have what I call poverty mentality. While I can afford new shoes and clothes, they have to be falling apart for me to replace. Story 8. Realizing I wanted to have the house that all my kids' friends came over to hang out at because that wasn't really an option for big chunks of my childhood. Story 9. I grew up poor and my husband grew up middle class. Whenever we have guests, I am constantly asking people if they got enough food. Is anyone still hungry? I can make something else. My husband will inquire about the quality of the food and if it is to everyone's liking. I think when you grow up poor, food is very much quantity over quality. Story 10. Still being marveled by an ice maker and side-by-side doors. Story 11. Immense financial anxiety. Story 12. In the US, I'd say poor dental history or teeth. Dental work is a luxury overall. I'd say many hoarders grew up poor because they are so afraid of not having something if they'll need it, so they keep everything. Story 13. Even though I now have money and things I want, I'm too scared to buy them because having money for bills and stuff is a luxury for me. Story 14. Sentimentality. Not that wealthier people can't be sentimental. But my dad, whose parents grew up in the rural South during the Great Depression, wants to keep every little thing of my mom's. Everything. He would prefer to keep her bedroom as is. I always wondered why he wanted to keep it like that. But then I realized, the only thing we have left is my mom's ashes in an urn. There was no funeral, no memorial, she didn't want any, and there was no one to come anyways, no tombstone. Nothing that feels tangible, personal, etc. We don't have the luxury of beautiful personal mausoleums, or headstones, or anything else in the Western death culture. My mom's bedroom, and all her stuff, is the closest we will ever have to a memorial for my mom. It's a tomb, without a body in it. Story 15. Will eat all of the food on their plate, even after feeling full because they can't waste food. Story 16. Lack of exposure to cultural events. Missing out on experiences that others may take for granted, such as attending concerts, traveling, or participating in extracurricular activities. Story 17. Spending any windfall money. The bone-deep certainty that money will just go away. There will always be another surprise bill or the car will break down. If you get some extra money, you buy the kids a trampoline because for once you don't have to say, no, we can't afford that. Story 18. A personal anecdote. For backstory, I'm the primary financial provider for my wife and I, but I really don't care what she does with our money. If our bills are paid and we have food to eat, I'm fine. I grew up fairly poor, so I never really bought anything for myself, or asked for anything to be bought for me. A few months ago, a video game I had wanted to play was on sale for like $2.50, and I said to my wife, "Hey, can I buy this?" Not really because I wanted permission, but because I hadn't logged in to check our financial state and didn't know if the money was already set aside for bills. But she looked at me and said, "Did you just ask permission to buy a $2.50 game with your own money?" So I'd say the hesitance to buy anything for yourself, regardless of how stupidly cheap it was. Story 19. I wasn't in the know with all the cool Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon shows. But I did watch Arthur, Cyberchase, Clifford, and Dragon Tales. Story 20. Turning down most social occasions. When I was particularly broke, I pretty much had no social life due to the guilt of not being able to afford a round, etc. Story 21. I have poverty toes. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so shoes were worn until they died, regardless of fit. My toes are curled and with prominent knuckles from being scrunched into too small shoes. Story 22. I grew up very poor, but now I'm doing quite well. I can't throw away shoes. I just accumulate athletic shoes. They go from running shoes to everyday shoes to working in the yard shoes. And then eventually my wife throws them away. I don't know why, but I can't do it. They're still good enough. I might need them one day. Edit, thanks, all. But what if I might need to rewear them someday? I could get my current shoes wet, or ruined, or they could wear out and fall apart. The old ones still have some life left in them. Story 23. Fear of spending money on anything or having anything nice. Story 24. Still being poor. Story 25. The mental struggle to buy anything and not feel guilty. Story 26. One day my girlfriend asked me why I'm washing Ziploc bags. I told her so we can reuse them later. It was only after the following discussion and some thinking that I realized it's not very normal. Story 27. When I was in elementary school, a girl asked me why all my shirts were just solid color and not brand name logo shirts. Made me feel insecure. So I'm going to go with an obvious answer here: clothing and style. I still wear my clothes until they have holes and stains. I have the money to buy new brand name clothes, but why? I'm not trying to impress anyone. Story 28. In USMC recruit training, we had a dude in our platoon who was homeless for an extended period of time before enlisting. Every morning at 0:30 the DIs would come and turn the light on, screaming, total chaos to wake us all up. Every single morning for the first 30 days or so of basic, this dude slept right through it. Kid said he was so comfortable in his little rack and hadn't slept so good in a long time. He was always exclaiming how good the food was at the chow hall. It put a lot of things in perspective for me. Story 29. I hoard money like a fucking ferret. To the point where I have anxiety spending money on necessities. Story 30. I'm a foster kid. I was always poor and pretty much had nothing. These are habits I have. I hoard food. They're still edible if they're past their expiration date, as long as it's not moldy or something. My basement is stocked for a zombie apocalypse. I never throw out old containers unless they're moldy or something. Clean that shit out, good as new. I also always have leftovers. I never waste food and eat everything on my plate. I feel guilty when I buy something I don't necessarily need. I add water to empty soap containers so they're full. I cut empty toothpaste tubes so I get every last drop. I reuse a lot of stuff. That the disposable stuff don't need to be disposed most of the time. You can reuse them. Story 31. Lots of cool whip and country crock containers. Story 32. Having duplicates of essentials. You develop a prepper mentality for every just-in-case situation. Story 33. Missing teeth, and the other results of a lack of being able to go to the dentist. Story 34. Never ordering pasta or any meal in a restaurant that doesn't include meat or some type of tangible value for the cost. Even if I really want pasta, I just can't accept spending $20 on pasta that cost pennies, even when a date across the table from me is ordering pasta that I'm going to pay for, which doesn't bother me. It will still only bother me if I do it. I make well over 6 figures, grew up poor, and still do all of the things mentioned here by others. Buying duplicates of items on sale. Never paying full price for anything. Always ordering off a value menu or at a restaurant ordering items based on value rather than what I actually want. Even when I spend money on expensive items such as a home, motorcycle, luxury goods, I still have to go into it with getting the biggest bang for my buck rather than just going with what I want or feel. It's a difficult habit to break, basically having to accept happiness and feelings are worth spending money on rather than the survival mindset of the long game. Story 35. Hesitant to go to the doctor when medical care is needed because of copays, even if they can afford it. Story 36. Getting excited when the temp dropped below 40 because that means we would get to go to bed with sleeping bags as well as blankets. It was super comfy to get bundled up and tell and read stories before sleeping. My dad made it an event for me and my brother. I realized as an adult that my parents couldn't afford to heat the apartment constantly. I still get pumped that first night put an extra comforter on the bed. Story 37. There's quite a bit. I didn't see them in myself until I was an adult and went to therapy. 1. Lack of basic wellness, e.g. no primary care doctor or dentist. Rationalizing this because there's a financial cost to it. 2. Serious guilt from buying anything you don't absolutely need. It's a feeling of, you don't deserve this or you're being stupid to ever want something. 3. Working yourself to death because of a serious insecurity about returning to poverty. My therapist called this the never again work ethic. It's toxic. 4. Eating your food so fast like you will never have another meal again. It's a sign of food insecurity growing up. My fiancé pointed this out to me that I did this, and it clicked when I talked with my therapist about it. It's very common. 5. General anti-establishment beliefs. The system failed you, so it's hard to trust something that put you through abuse. This can manifest in bad financial literacy, or lack of belief in banks/stock market, etc. Story 38. Enjoying cinnamon, sugar, and butter on a slice of bread because we couldn't afford sweet treats. It low-key slapped though. Story 39. Eats everything edible on a chicken wing, and I mean everything. Story 40. Only shopping in the clearance sections even after I grew up and started making good money. Story 41. Dark humor. A lot of it. Story 42. You guys got out of poverty? Story 43. I was told recently I was crazy for using bread instead of hot dog buns. That's just something I always did as it's what we had. Burgers, hot dogs, all bread fellas. Story 44. A massive amount of shame and guilt over asking for any sort of help. I will be 32 this year and I still feel so absolutely horrible asking anyone for help. Like I am the greatest burden in the world. Story 45. My friend runs a foster home for kids in need. She keeps an anytime pantry for the kids to help themselves anytime they want. Fruits and other healthy snacks. Anytime they want. I had the pleasure of splitting a banana with one of these kids. Made me so happy she does this. Am tearing up typing this. This is to stop them from hoarding foods under the sheets of their bed. They still do it the first week or two. Story 46. Someone asked me if my kid was going to do dance or gymnastics. I was confused as to why. Their response was, "Didn't you do it as a kid?" No, that cost money. I was lucky to play with a knockoff Barbie. Story 47. Refilling your drink before leaving the fast food joint. Story 48. Wearing the same clothes often/every day. A lot of kids that I've seen at school wear the same clothes quite often. Story 49. Accepting bad quality things, both physical things and life things, such as the way you are treated, because that's just how things are. The mental poverty trap holds you long after you're not hungry anymore. You can't imagine a better life even with your current upgraded means because you weren't made for that life. When I think of how to describe my experience of loving my husband, I call him my white picket fence. I know that's weird, but for a kid who grew up pretty damn dirt poor, the idea of a happy marriage seemed locked behind the image of an entirely different class of people. It was like stepping out of a fog and realizing I had been standing next to a ravine for no reason. Story 50. The grunge movement was the best damn thing to happen in my life. I loved the music and I didn't dress grunge, I was just poor and had shitty clothes. So, I was grunge by default. Story 51. They really enjoy the school lunch. Story 52. Eating out a lot when they finally have money/treating every restaurant experience as an event. Story 53. Mixing water in your shampoo/soap to get the last little bit out before throwing away the container. Story 54. Using hot dog buns to make garlic bread, butter plus garlic salt. Story 55. Little or no financial literacy. If you grew up poor, chances are you had no one around to teach you about how to manage things like mortgages, large amounts of savings, or how to budget past the point of juggling bills. It sucks because knowing how to do these things is such a useful skill, and can get you out of a lot of difficult situations if you play your cards right. Knowing how to manage money also prevents you from being taken advantage of by people and companies that don't have your best interest at heart. While I'm here, if you identify with this comment, please check out r/Poverty Finance and r/Poverty Finance Canada. They're super helpful. Story 56. A big sign is that someone is capable of fixing almost anything. I'm doing quite well now, but I grew up in poverty. I'm a guy who can sew, fix an oven, replace a starter on a car, etc. I learned these skills because growing up, I didn't have a choice. There was no just buying new things when the old ones broke. Story 57. Looking at the ground when you walk. You never know what trinket or coin you might find. When you have nothing, anything is something. Story 58. Having a vast skill set. Trust me, when you can't afford a repairman/hairdresser/seamstress/builder/roofer/welder/mechanic etc., you learn yourself. Story 59. I went without food sometimes when I was growing up. It took a long time before I stopped hoarding food once I could afford it. My husband always commented on how long it would take me to go through the chocolate he would bring back from his international trips. I was always afraid it would be the last time we could get it and would make it last as long as humanly possible. I am quick to shut down spending and I am much better at saving money than my husband. I also keep our heat set at 63 for the day and I am usually the last in the neighborhood to turn on our air conditioning. I still shop sales and I don't understand things like renovating a perfectly fine kitchen just because you don't like the color of the countertop or cabinets. Story 60. Wash plastic silverware so you can reuse them again. Story 61. Spoiling their children while not buying things for themselves. Story 62. When I was still in the army, I did a tour in Korea. In Korea, All the men are required to do 2 years of national service. Some join the Korean National Police, some join the Korean Army, etc. Well, those that pass a certain level on their English exam become katusas, or Korean augmentee to the United States Army and come work with us. They're still Korean Army, but they wear our uniform, it says Katusa instead of US Army on the name tape, and live and work with us. You could always tell the ones who came from poorer families, because they wasted nothing. Seriously, even though cleaning supplies were freely available to them, all they had to do was ask. You'd walk into their barracks room and find that they had washed paper towels and laid them out to dry. That's just one example. Sticking with the Army theme, you'd see guys in boot camp sending almost their entire paychecks home to their folks because, as lousy as one with less than 4 months of service pay actually is, currently $1,773 a month before taxes, to them it was like winning the goddamn lottery. Story 63. Hoarding. Not the have 6 dead cats in your house hoarding, but the impulse to buy multiples of things just in case. Oh, this is on sale, let me buy a case of them just in case I might need it one day. It's a habit I've had to break myself. I distinctly remember what it feels like going without, and I don't want to ever feel like that again. So if I have to buy pants or shoes that are 2 sizes too large but they're cheap, I will. Just in case. Story 64. If I look at myself, lol, they are very frugal with money. When you grew up in poverty, often had to learn how to make ends meet with very little resources. This leads to a mindset of thriftiness and a habit of making do with what they have. Even if the financial situation has improved, you may still be careful with their spending and avoid unnecessary expenses. They have a strong work ethic. When you grow up poor, you often have to work hard just to survive. This leads to a strong sense of work ethic and a drive to succeed. You are very motivated to work hard and achieve your goals, even if it means putting in long hours and making sacrifices. Story 65. They'll tell you what they paid for things, particularly if they got a really good deal. It was 80% off. I only paid $12.99. Story 66. Hoarding sugar packets, sauce packets, napkins, plastic forks and spoons, jelly packets, butter packets, and leftovers that sit in the freezer for 3 years. This was my grandfather. He was born in the Great Depression, so he would take anything he could from a restaurant. When he passed, we cleaned out his kitchen to find all sorts of things he could not just throw away, most of which were expired years before. Story 67. The bread store. This was a second-hand bakery-type place where food was really cheap. My mom went there a lot as I grew up. Story 68. In grade school, I had to use the same paper bag for my lunches for multiple weeks. I had to use the same baggie for my sandwich for a full week. Family of 6 in a 2-bedroom house, 1 bath. Wood stove in 1 room. The room that all 4 kids shared was farthest from the room with the wood stove. Story 69. Using the top of the fridge as a shelf. Story 70. Either terrified of spending money or has very little impulse control and very much regrets the spending spree. They also typically feel bad for letting others pay for their things, i.e., lunch, clothing, small things like gifts. Story 71. I'm surprised I haven't seen the obvious answer, which is respect and decency. Being poor, you're forced to be on your best behavior at all times because you literally can't afford to be a dick. Story 72. When they know what layaway is. Story 73. The first thing they look while examining an item at a store is the price tag. Story 74. In the US. Generally their teeth. Story 75. When I was young, I once got invited over to a friend's house for lunch and noticed they had a brick of USDA government-issued cheese. This was an eye-opener for me and the first time I realized I knew someone who was poor. Our family was lower middle class and my friend's family, same school district, probably had just slightly less income, but it still shocked me. Story 76. Might just be personal experience, but they sit down and appreciate movies more. Thanks for tuning in to Peak Reddit. We hope you enjoyed hearing the latest and greatest stories from the most interesting corners of Reddit. If you loved what you saw and heard today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Peak Reddit community. You can check out more videos from us, you might like them. And if you have any amazing stories or experiences that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment or shoot us a message and let us know what you think. We'll see you in the next video.